Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about what is database. So in the previous video, we did mention something about like what is healthcare data, which includes their claims data and there's EHR data. All these information could be called a data. And so this lecture, we're delving into what is database. So what is a database? A database is essentially a structured way to storing information so we can access it easily. I'll emphasize that databases aren't limited to digital formats. It could be historical, they exist on paper, cards, or even physical logs. Today, most databases are electronic, but the core idea remains the same: organize data with a purpose. So here's a comparison of data versus information. I highlighted differences that data is raw, which includes numbers, text, images, and doesn't mean much on its own. Information is what we get after processing or interpreting data. It is important because databases store data, but organizations rely on information to make decisions. So what are some of the components of a database? A database is made out of tables, and each table has rows, and columns. Rows represent individual records, and columns represent attributes. I'll briefly point to the example table to show how structured this format is, which you can see it from here. You can add more columns, can include date of birth or codes, ICD codes, which we'll explain later on what is ICD codes or CPT codes. It can basically be a lot of structured information about a patient or a claims information. So what is DBMS? A DBMS stands for Database Management System. It's a software layer that manages the database. It helps us to create, storage, organize, secure, and retrieve data. I'll stress that without a DBMS, managing large amounts of data would be extremely difficult. And I actually created a slide that compares all DBMS. So this table shows different DBMS options and how they differ in type, cost, scalability, and use cases. I'll highlight that enterprise systems like Oracle and SQL Server are powerful but expensive, while MySQL is widely used because it is an open source. Some older systems like FoxPro and DBase are now discontinued. Okay, well, here's a clarify the distinctions between database versus DBMS. The database is the actual data, whereas the DBMS is the software that manages that data. They work together as part of a larger database system. So I mentioned earlier about database system. So what is a database system again? It's very confusing. Well, the definition of database system includes both the DBMS software and the data itself. It is the complete environment used to store and manage information. So why do we need databases, right? Like, what is it for? So the major benefit of databases are data independence. Applications don't break when the data structure changes. Efficient access, where DBMS use optimized algorithms to handle large data sets. Lastly, reduce development time, so the developer don't need to reinvent data handling tools. So part 2, why do we use databases again? Aside from the one that we mentioned earlier, there are more advantages to it. Another one would be integrity and security. Databases enforce rules and control access. Again, uniform administrations, everything is centrally managed, so that way it could be a bit more secure. And concurrency and recovery. Multiple users can work at once and the system can recover from crashes. So what are some of the definitions? Here are some key concepts. A data model describes how data is structured. A schema defines the structure of a specific data sets. The relational models organizes data into a table, such as logical versus physical independence, where logical protects applications from structural changes, where the physical protects them from storage level changes. All right, so for the next slide, next lecture, we're going to briefly talk about why databases are important. Again, if you have not watched any content about what healthcare data is, please go back to the previous content. And if you want to have more in-depth information, please leave a comment and I will make a video about those topics that you're interested in. Thank you.